small rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Boy, I'm telling you, you are not going to find more thorough coverage of the Book of Boba Fett than right here at Rebel Force Radio. You've got the Book of Boba Fett after show, where we talk about everything that's happening on the screen. And then you got trusty old RFR talking about everything that's going on off the screen. As our two lead actors, Temuera Morrison and Ming-Na continue to make the rounds on their media tour. And something that's sort of interesting is that it seems as though these stories and these little waves that are made as Tem and Ming make their rounds, it seems like it takes a few days for them to really kind of pop, and all of a sudden people are paying attention. And I find that interesting because it seemed as though with other Star Wars projects, people were just waiting. And these, they tend to percolate out there. And then all of a sudden, people start to notice. So I don't know exactly what that might mean, but we've got more of Tem and Ming as I say, they continue their media tour. Plus, we've got some Star Wars and pop culture. We got a great voicemail about Book of Boba Fett. And we're going to take a look at the history of the death of Boba Fett. Yeah. So more on that in a little bit. But first, introductions in order. We know many of you, we hear from many of you, are discovering Rebel Force Radio, the podcast, because of Rebel Force Radio's Book of Boba Fett after show and the other after shows that we've done on YouTube. So if you're new to the program, welcome to Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force, #1 Star Wars podcast anywhere in the galaxy. My name is Jason, and with me, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yes, it's true. We are obsessed with Boba Fett around here lately, it seems. And it's just great. I mean, new Star Wars. And it's coming out, and it's fresh, and everyone's talking about it. And that gives us sharp focus here on Rebel Force Radio. So, yeah, I like the way you put it, Jason. We talk about what goes on screen during the after show, and we talk about what goes on off screen here on RFR.
Yeah. So, well, let's get right into it. Let's kick things off. We got a interesting voicemail here from Rebel Force Radio listener. Let's go to it.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Chat boys. Just finished Chapter 4 of Book of Boba Fett. Oh, and by the way, this is Chuck from Oregon. I've called in twice now. Hopefully this gets through, but not to be a downer, but I have not been a big fan of Boba Fett, or the Book of Boba Fett, as I was with The Mandalorian. Like, I was, with The Mando, I was so excited waiting for each episode every week. It was just like the best thing ever. And this really hasn't got me like that until tonight. Like, trying to hold back on the curse words, but my God, this episode this is what I was looking for. Like, it hit every note. Him with, letting the bantha go kind of as like a nice little gesture and everything. It had all the elements I was looking for. Just adventure, kind of fun, kind of light, and everything, and it explains so much. And to see, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, the Slave One. I'm not going to say the new name because I'm sorry, I'm old school in that way. PT and OT. But anyways, want to get your thoughts. Chuck from Oregon. Chuck boys. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Chuck. Chut to you, and yeah, PT and OT forever. Well, this is what we were talking about last night as I introed the after show, is that it is starting to thaw certain people out that maybe weren't as excited about the first 3 episodes. The 4th episode seems to have broken through to some. Now there's some that are out there still holding firm, saying this isn't my Boba Fett. But nonetheless, you know, Chuck's still there every week and giving it a try. And, you know, not that it's an effort, but sticking with it to see where this is going to go. I think, Jim, you have, I think, described it very, very well and laid out some of the differences between this show and The Mandalorian. I don't think that this is at all even intended to be a pickup or an extension of The Mandalorian. At least at this point, it isn't. That's not to say that we won't end up there, but I don't think that that is the story that they're trying to tell or that they've been trying to tell thus far. And, you know, however, in listening back to the after show, something that really stuck with me afterwards was how you described the return every week to these very familiar settings, you know, the mayor's office, Jabba's palace, of course, his home base, the Sanctuary Club. And when you walk into the Sanctuary Club, it's even like the same people hanging out.
Yeah.
You know, they got, it's like the Cheers bar. It's the same guys, you know, and gals. So that does tend to shrink it up. But hey, at least in Chuck's mind, this episode really started getting things moving in the right direction.
Well, good. I'm happy for Chuck, and I'm happy for a lot of fans who seemed like they were about ready to jump off a cliff after the Mod Squad showed up in Chapter 3. But I can forgive that kind of stuff, you know, because I know there's going to be a next week. And I know that we're just like right in the middle of the story. It needs to unfold. It needs to establish itself. And then it'll start really hitting on all cylinders, I think, as we watch these final 3 episodes. I think that you know what's going to hit the fan. And quite honestly, I'm really digging the Book of Boba because it seems like it was made for the super fan. And I'm a super fan, and I think a lot of people listening to Star Wars podcasts, you'd be a super fan too. And I think this show is made for us. I see a lot of technical talk going on in regard to how the show is constructed and the tone of the show and how the show is produced and stuff. But I really don't let that stuff get into my head. As a Star Wars fan, the pure Star Wars fan in me, the Book of Boba Fett is pushing a lot of the right buttons, and it's showing me stuff I wanted to see since I was a kid. And like you were saying, Jason, with these returns to the same locales all the time, it sure feels like a TV show at times. Mm-hmm. The Mandalorian, right, it seemed like was very cinematic through and through. I felt like the Mandalorian was just a stone's throw away from being something that is 100% ready for the silver screen. But despite the fact that it does come off more like a TV show, it's still hitting me in all the right feels. Yeah. And the thing I like the best about it, one final thing I want to say is I think it has amazing rewatchability. I find myself rewatching the Book of Boba Fett and still feeling like it's fresh each time I see it. And I don't know if I quite had that same sensation from The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, I've had a lot of fun revisiting after the series had wrapped up. The first 2 seasons have wrapped up, I should say. Seasons. The series has not wrapped up, but after the seasons have wrapped up, I go back and punch up an episode of The Mandalorian and love watching it, but I feel more of an immediate desire to rewatch these Boba Fett shows. And I watch them many times throughout the week, even after we do our after show breakdowns. Yeah. So,
yeah, I wonder sometimes, you know, why this series got such a small scope, small scale. Now, again, We haven't seen the whole thing. I could be eating my words come next week or the week after, or by the time the series is over. But I do wonder, though, if they thought, in the case of The Mandalorian, it was like, hey, we're carving out a whole new character here, a bunch of new characters, and we don't have that, that legacy character to sort of lean on with this series. With Boba, I wonder if they thought, well, all people want to see is Boba Fett. He's such a popular character. Not that story isn't important, but maybe they thought that they could afford to tell a smaller, more intimate story because they had such a major fan favorite of a character. I think the problem with that is that it's not the same Boba Fett by design. It's not like it's an accident. I don't think Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni or Robert Rodriguez, I don't think it's a question of whether they don't know what made Boba Fett cool in the original films and, the Man of Mystery and all of that stuff. I mean, Dave Filoni's probably forgotten more of that than most of us will ever know. That guy knows Star Wars through and through, inside and out, what makes it good, what makes it great. I think Jon Favreau also has a good understanding of that stuff. I think they're telling, I guess what I'm saying is that I think they're telling the show or the story exactly the way they intended to tell it. I think they knew what they were doing. You can disagree, with the execution, but I don't think any of this is sloppy. I don't think any of it is happenstance. I think it's all very deliberate and very purposeful.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I like looking at it and analyzing it and breaking it all down for what it is. I noticed during the live feed last night, just at the very end, somebody snuck in a comment on the live chat and it said something about us making excuses for crappy writing and stuff. It's not, just because we're analyzing,
really,
and it's not like we're making excuses for the crappy writing. It's just, we're talking about the Star Wars that had just been presented to us as opposed to hand-wringing and pining over the things we wish it was. And that's how a lot of people are critiquing this stuff, thinking that they can't even discuss it because it wasn't what they wanted.
You have to talk about the show or the film that you're watching, not the one that's in your head or the one that you wished, it was. And that can be a challenge when you're engaging in this kind of, discourse about something like that. It's easy to slip into what they should have done is, and then all of a sudden you're going down that trail. But no, I agree with you. And I think that I would not be a bit surprised if this really was a very slow burn at start on purpose, and that we're going to see some real serious stuff in the next few episodes. I really think that I'd be very surprised if that was not the case. So
I think episode 2 was outstanding with that train chase and everything. That must have cost quite a lot of money. And so if you look at other episodes that lack that epic scale and scope, then you have to say, well, maybe they spent all their money on the train sequence, because that does happen,
Sure.
Some funds get allocated toward one certain area, and as a result, then other areas might not have the benefit of a huge bankroll behind it. So you'll have Boba and Fennec sitting by a bonfire for 3 scenes in one episode or what have you. But I don't see the show suffering that much in that regard. And I think it looks pretty sharp, and I'm really looking forward to these last 3 episodes for sure. The current climate around it, as far as critics and fans are concerned, it really reminds me a lot of the prequel era, where people were feeling like, well, all of these years we've carried around thoughts and ideas about these characters and connected with those thoughts and ideas in such a way that if it's not being presented in the way we want it, then we're going to revolt. And that's what happened with the prequels. Not so much with the sequels. The sequels were more like studio executives starting fights on Twitter with fans. That took it to a whole different level.
Yes,
man.
yes,
that made
yes.
it
That
personal.
makes a big difference. when the creatives don't throw themselves into the fray, that makes an enormous difference. Absolutely, because it allows the fans just to go and have these discussions, these debates, without the creatives feeling that they need to defend themselves. You don't see Jon Favreau going on Twitter every week defending this week's episode and calling out the ones that don't like it, calling them names, saying they're not real fans, and all that crap that went on with the sequel trilogy. For very, 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 very different. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
But, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And fans are really voicing their opinions about it. But what I prefer about this is that everyone is really focused on character and story and tone and things like that,
Right.
There's a lot of armchair filmmakers out there. The Monday morning filmmaker who's sitting at home and they have all the knowledge of the greats, going back to John Ford and Charlie Chaplin. They know everything there is to know about film. But they've never actually made a film.
Right.
And they're using all of that inside baseball knowledge to fuel their critiques. And it's really funny to be seeing, film school happen on social media. And I get a kick out of that. But at least everyone's focused on what's going on the screen.
Yes.
As opposed to being called childish man babies or whatever
right.
by the actual creators. Because, that really took things up a notch.
Or that you're not accepting characters because of their nationality or their gender or any of that.
Yeah,
this
all
is
of
all
that
about,
stuff.
right. Yeah,
that was very tiresome.
Very much
and,
so.
So I think there's more of a purity about fans critiquing the Book of Boba Fett at this point in time. I don't see like hatred really. I see frustration coming off of people, and I think that's fine. I believe fandom should have a voice, even if it's critical. But don't crap on me for liking the Book of Boba Fett, because I did live through the prequel era, and I was very staunch in my support for the prequels. And I feel like we're living through that era again.
I do think that there's a lot, and I'm certainly not a sports guy by any means, but I live in an area that is very sports minded, sports driven, and growing up as a kid with my whole family is, big Cleveland Browns fans, and my grandfather would just get so angry and heartbroken every week, but I never doubted his love for the team. No matter how mad he got, no matter how much he cursed, various players and owners and all of that, the passion and the love for it was always there. And I feel like that's the kind of conversations we're having about Book of Boba Fett. There's you said it, Jim, a purity to the discourse. It might get heated, but it doesn't get, it stays within the bounds of Star Wars. We'll put it that way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like Paul Bateman in the Zippers.
Right.
People jumped on that because they're like, Star Wars fans have lost their minds. They don't understand. They're tearing everything apart. These people are like so sensitive about anybody having an opinion.
Right.
And then they attack Paul for having one.
Right.
But Paul is just trying to carry on with the legitimacy of how the costume designers approached the original films. And one of those rules was no visible zippers.
Right.
And it's not like, Paul is really like, he needs to take blood pressure medication because there's a zipper on a Star Wars TV show. It's not like that. But I think he's just trying to promote the integrity of what's happened historically in Star Wars. And if guys like Paul Bateman aren't carrying that mantle, then we're all doomed. We're all doomed.
Right.
And, guys like Favreau and Filoni, they get that. But occasionally a puck goes past the goalie. And that's what I believe has happened in the case of, the mods themselves, because that's what Paul was talking about specifically, was Sophie Thatcher with that zipper vest. But I mean, the mods themselves, head to toe, is something completely outside the realm of Star Wars. They're a cyberpunk gang.
Even Thundercat, which I saw after your discussion. I had no idea that guy was a notable bass player and all of that. And then sure enough, this morning, one of the first news items that I saw was Thundercat makes his debut in Book of Boba Fett. There was the whole thing, but Jim gave us the lowdown on the after show this week. But he had a very different look, very much of that cyberpunk. But as I said, it's not my cup of tea. I don't really care for it. But it's not like the mods are now all of a sudden in every other scene. They were hardly in this last episode. I mean, I think they'll appear and they'll probably be involved in whatever big battle is yet to come. But I don't think that they've necessarily overstayed their welcome here.
They were like in 10 minutes of that one episode.
Right.
That's really it. And, but again, not to be insensitive to others' critique of it, because I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. But I don't think that's any reason to throw the entire season under the bus.
Right.
Or under the sandcrawler, I should say.
Right. Well, that's what we think. What do Tim Morrison and Ming-Na Wen think? Well, we'll get to it. We've got headlines coming up right now.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news.
Good news.
Come closer, I have good news.
All right, straight out of the Hollywood Reporter. Book of Boba Fett stars react to biker gang controversy.
Controversy.
These things are out of our control, they say. So Tim Morrison and Ming-Na Wen being interviewed by the folks, I believe, here at the Hollywood Reporter. No, I'm sorry. I take it back. This was the Hollywood Reporter reporting on a panel. I looked everywhere for this panel online. I thought for sure it had to be on YouTube. It wasn't. I found old ones, but not this one.
The TCA Winter Press Tour. Yeah, right. It's something that's not permitted to be broadcast.
I see. Well, we might know why after reading the following quotes, but this was something that I really didn't necessarily see coming. So they were both asked about how the show handled the Tusken Raiders, and with maybe giving them sort of the respect that perhaps some, I'm thinking like some of the old timey Westerns and stuff didn't necessarily show to Native Americans, at the time, and that Mandalorian started with Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett have taken the Tusken culture and really opened it up, explored it, and showed that there's more to them than just animals, as Klieg Lars said in episode 2. And what we were, from the very beginning, I mean, Luke wasn't doing anything. Luke was just looking through his binoculars, and all of a sudden we see what happens, So he's just attacked brutally while he was kind of, I guess he wasn't minding his own business. He was peeking in on him. But, I mean, what is that, a crime? Does he need to get beaten up for that?
Well, you have to pay the toll to go through the Judlin wastes.
Right.
Much like you have to go through the Dune Sea. You have to pay a toll.
But apparently some people weren't satisfied. No matter how much... a show like Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett does to, extol the virtues of these native cultures and tribes. Some people it's just not good enough. So some were upset about the death of the Tuskens. And Tim Morrison said that their portrayal of the Tuskens was better than it was in the films. He says, then I read in the script we were throwing dead bodies just on the fire, and I was going, oh, hang on. We got to put a bit of ceremony into this. But they are indigenous of the sands of Tatooine, and I was creating a little bit more history about their own culture, and I was pulling from my own culture, his Maori culture, in a way, in terms of the ceremonies and preparing the warrior and preparing a weapon. And Boba has never experienced a real family before with the young Tuskens and the old Tuskens and protecting their land. So you can you can tell that that some of that sort of ceremony that was thrown in to that sequence was likely coming from Tem, and he was drawing from his own, his own history as I won't say a native, but a native person to the New Zealand area, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just don't understand what kind of ceremony he actually, because he just threw him into the fire and stood there and watched.
Didn't he do like a little dance?
He did not do a little dance. No, a little dance.
I thought he did. I thought he was doing that's when he forged the weapon. He was doing because he was around the fire and he was doing some very, I wouldn't not a dance, but it was obviously some sort of, custom.
Yes.
It was ceremonial. It was ceremonial.
It was ceremonial. Like the haka he talks about, which is that presentation they do with the stick, and it's the Maori thing, and he's done it.
Right.
He's done it before.
So that's what he was talking about. In the quote, he's talking about, preparing the warrior, preparing the weapon. That's what he was talking about, infusing it. But in terms of the Tuskens, no, he just threw them on the pyre, but it was done really dramatically. It wasn't like he was, just tossing them aside like they were worthless. It was they lit Qui-Gon Jinn on fire at the end of episode 1. I mean, Luke sets Vader on fire. I mean, that's in the Star Wars universe. That seems to be somewhat a universal way of showing respect. I mean, there's cultures that still do that to this day.
The funeral pyre.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And you could even argue, you could even argue in episode 4 when they're throwing the dead Jawas on, there's a very somber feeling to that. Obi-Wan is presiding. It wouldn't be hard to imagine that was Obi-Wan's idea, that was his way of paying respect for the massacre that happened on that Jawa sandcrawler. So to me, I see all of these as instances of great respect being paid to whoever is being burned.
I think it was 3PO who referred to Jawas as filthy rodents.
Filthy creatures.
Filthy creatures, that's what it is. When they're at Mos Eisley, and this is after their funeral pyre of Jawas. So obviously it was Obi-Wan. Otherwise, 3PO and R2, they probably would have just left them there.
Yeah.
Instead of cleaning up the mess. But Ben, that would have been Ben who motivated them. The thing that surprises me about this back and forth going on here at this media junket is I didn't know there was backlash about the death of the Tuskens. I almost felt like that was where the story was naturally progressing.
Right.
And that
who was surprised? These pointy-headed critics, I guess, they were surprised.
Well, they live in their own little bubble and get outraged about anything. But I did not know about any backlash. We did a couple of after shows and nobody really exhibited any sort of backlash.
Some of this stuff does only exist in certain circles.
Yes, right.
Where they're just looking. Yeah, these bubbles where they're just looking. There's got to be something I can be offended about. So
right. You can be offended by anything if you want to be.
Right.
And then you throw it at Tim Morrison and he's just like arching his eyebrow going, what the hell are these people talking about? Are they watching the same show? What's going on here?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Ming-Na Wen chimed in. She said, "We know a little about the Tuskens, and this show really gave them an incredible backstory. I thought all those elements really enrich who the Tuskens are, and setting the bodies on fire was part of Star Wars history with A New Hope, whether it was the Jawas when they were attacked. And Ming, man, she's coming at this is right off the dome with her, throwing out the examples because we know that she's a big fan." Which I think is so cool. She says, whether it's the Jawas when they were attacked, there is this ceremonious desire on Tatooine to burn the bodies as opposed to letting them lie out in the open in the desert. Yeah, thank you, Ming-Na Wen, for jumping in there. But you're right. It's like what a question. Again, I think it's inventing controversy. I can't imagine any serious person. And think about this though. We know so little about the Tuskens, and this show really gave them a incredible backstory. I thought all those elements really enrich who the Tuskens are. They're imaginary people. They're not a real race.
Right. That's right.
We're so
There are people out there who think that every fictional thing should have something that connects with them personally,
right?
Or something that they like a cause they believe in or something.
I need to see myself.
There's no sense of fairy tale anymore.
Oh
there's no
my
sense
gosh.
of wonder or fantasy. Everything has to be grounded in something that is.
Is it really cool that we call them the Seven Dwarfs? Like, seriously, whoever thinks about them?
Yeah. Well, I'm 6'1". When I watch that show, I feel like I'm totally being excluded.
When it comes to, it's bad enough when people come with their pitchforks and their torches after, something that's, maybe biographical or takes place in the real world sometimes. But when they come after a fantasy, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
However, that was not the real controversy. The real controversy among Star Wars fans are the mods, are the biker gang. And they asked Tem and Ming about this. And Tem Morrison said, this is his quote.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things are out of our control. We can't say as performers, we don't want to work with these people. That's not good enough. They brought a lot of color to it. I thought they were great. They were working hard. Okay. So that's a pretty diplomatic answer, but I think also very transparent, where, if somebody says, well, what did you think of that? Some of the fans thought it was a little non-Star Wars or whatnot. And the answer is, hey, some of these things are out of our control. That implies that maybe even Tem thought that this was not so great. And he goes on to say, but we can't say as performers, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. So it might be fair to assume that he may have had some misgivings about that concept. I don't know.
Or I think at the very least he's seen the criticisms. He's read the reviews, he's seen the critiques, and he just, he's like, oh, I guess they don't like that. Tem didn't realize that probably while they were shooting. He didn't stand there going Vespas and Star Wars. That's not Tem Morrison. He says,
right.
he likes it. What I like about Tem is that he brings it into his area of expertise, and that is working with these people on the set and executing the scenes that they were challenged to execute.
He's not a Star Wars expert. He's not going to pretend to be. You're absolutely right. He reframes the question or the answer in a way that he relates to. It's a great point.
He moves it into the realm of his expertise.
Yes.
And he says they brought a lot of color to it. I don't think he's talking about the Vespa scooters.
No, I think he's talking about personality. And
yes, of course.
Yeah. And then Ming-Na Wen, not to be outdone, says this is a real homage to the things George Lucas always loved, whether it was the mods in the 60s or American Graffiti. At the same time, it lends itself to learning more about Tatooine, and Sophie was a lovely human being, and I definitely enjoyed getting to know her. I think they both handled the question fantastically.
I have to push back a little on Ming-Na, because we're getting into this area where I'm really uncomfortable with, and that's people like Ming-Na Wen putting words in George Lucas's mouth, putting thoughts in his head that might not necessarily be there. She claims that George Lucas always loved, her words, mods in the 60s. I have never, ever seen George Lucas reference mods from the 60s in conversation or on film. Or I'll tell you what. Those London mods are wild. I love them. I got to do more about them. And American Graffiti had nothing to do with the mods.
No.
And so it's American Graffiti isn't about a biker gang or mods. It has nothing to do with this topic at all. It's about cruising in the period which it was placed, the 60s, featuring, maybe a couple of colorful cars. There's a a yellow car and a red car, a baby blue convertible, but these are cars that were legitimately part of the era in which American Graffiti takes place. They're not gangs. These aren't gangs. They're out cruising and drag racing. And I saw the mods in the Book of Boba Fett do neither. They were hoodlums. And that's
shaking down the poor moisture farmer,
right,
or reseller, or whatever it is.
In American Graffiti whatsoever. American Graffiti is a coming of age film, and I just fear that she's saying this is an homage to things that George Lucas loved. This has nothing to do with George Lucas, and I think that that's something of like a shield that she's using. And I don't know if somebody from Lucasfilm told her to say this or what, but it's I think a flawed response. And I think she's really overstepping her boundaries by speaking for George Lucas in this specific situation.
Well, I think you bring up a lot of really good points. I guess that what I would say is that I think there are comparisons that you can make. I think that the cars were in some ways reflective of the individuality and the personalities of the owners, the drivers. And yeah, I was thinking of the bright colors, and you're right to point out it wasn't a huge part of it, but certainly the photography of the film, some of the classic shots and the marketing of the film portrayed these hot rod cars from the 60s. So is it simplistic or overly simplistic? Yes. But I also think that the idea of teens with their special rides that, again, are somewhat indicative of their personalities, I can see how the comparison could be made. Does she go a little too far with this quote? Yeah, I think you're right. I think to say George, always loved, but that could be one of those things like, why did I say that? I shouldn't have said that. Now, I do have an issue, and this isn't really pointed at Ming-Na, but just like now, all of a sudden, it's okay to invoke George Lucas. No one gave two rats, what about George Lucas when the sequel trilogy was coming out. You heard very little about George Lucas and paying homage or respect to George Lucas. It was like a 4-letter word. Now all of a sudden, it's okay. That invoking the great GL is a way, like you said, a shield or a way to kind of put a good housekeeping stamp on an idea. Yes. By saying, wow, George loved this, and he always loved it. I am hesitant to pick on Ming-Na too much, because I too went, when I saw it, oh, American Graffiti, I kind of get it. That might be one of the inspirations for it. But yeah, I mean, if you really know the movie really well, then it sort of falls apart.
I have a feeling that Ming-Na never saw American Graffiti for making a statement like that, because there's what you said, Jason, about teens showing off their identity and their personality via their rides. Okay, that makes sense to me, but we've not seen any of that come from the mods. We haven't seen a single scene where they discuss their rides or take care of their rides.
You're right about that. We can only assume that there's some meaning behind the uniqueness of them. Absolutely. I think that maybe had we gotten to know the mods a little bit more, perhaps some of this criticism wouldn't be as rampant, but as they were just kind of thrown in, and it was like, hey, here's something cool, and shiny, literally, holding it up for everyone to see. And yeah, there just wasn't you could go back and you could look at Ahsoka. You could look at any of these. She comes to mind as a concept or as an idea that, was first met with some criticism, but you spent a lot of time with her and she grew to become this indelible character. So when you're going to throw something kind of shocking and new at us, maybe you need to make sure it's something that you're going to invest a little time in, so that we have a reason to like it. Give us a reason to like it. Give us a reason to get to know it.
Yeah. I mean, just one scene with them working on their rides or just something about it. Yeah. I mean, they made a big deal about the cybernetic eye. I'd like to see that love go to the Vesper speeder, but it hasn't. And I'll tell you what right now, and this goes for Ming-Na or anyone listening to the show, you will get $100 from me. I will Venmo it to you or Apple Pay, whatever, if you can present me with a quote from George Lucas saying he always loved mods from the 60s.
And a million fingers just hit their keyboards on Google. George Lucas,
everyone's Googling
60s. George Lucas mods 60s.
Oh, good luck. You'll find a lot of George Lucas mods for Star Wars Battlefront 2, where you can actually play as George Lucas.
Right.
So good luck wading through all that, friends, because that's all I found. And I've read every book about George. I know his history pretty well. Yep. I've never, ever heard him reference mods, the London mod scene.
It was the mods, wasn't it? Was it the mods versus the punks, or versus the rockers? The rockers, the mods versus the rockers. Yeah.
Yes.
Before my time. All right. Collider. We got more. Tim Morrison and Ming-Na Wen. Collider. They had them take a Star Wars quiz. Oh, I can only imagine. Poor Tim.
Well, it's just kind of a fun little thing that they're doing where they have to answer all these questions.
Wait, is this BuzzFeed or is this Collider?
This is BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I put Collider on the notes. Yes, it is BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed. They all blend in for me,
Yeah.
And they all do the same interviews for the most part too. So it's hard to kind of tell the difference in any of them. But Tim Morrison and Ming-Na, they're taking this Star Wars quiz, and they're just like opinion-based answers that you give. And then at the end of the quiz, it tells you what Star Wars character you are. Okay.
I would assume he's Boba Fett.
See these things online.
I mean, my God. Let's find out what Star Wars character are you?
Well, here's what happened. They took the full quiz, and I'll tell you after we listen to this one highlight.
Here we go.
Tem and Ming-Na, what character they turned out.
Dying to find out.
Here's part of the quiz. I just pulled this part because Tim gives a very interesting answer to the question, and it has sent fans' heads are spinning now after Tim offered this answer.
All right.
Which creature would you travel across the galaxy to steal?
Ooh. Okay. A Porg, a Tauntaun, an Ewok, a Zelen, a Yoda species, or a Wookiee? I'm going first. A Yoda species.
Oh, I'm going to go with an Ewok.
Yeah.
I like those Ewoks. They were great to work with. They were funny.
They were funny.
What? What? So, as we've stated on last week's show, somehow it's been determined that Ming-Na Wen is going to hold Tim Morrison's leash when they go out on these media junkets and make sure Tim isn't spoiling things. I remember that from last week.
Yes.
But in this case, Tim says something about the Ewoks and working with the Ewoks, which raises my eyebrow. And what is even more confusing is that Ming-Na agrees with him when he says they were a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, they were.
I think it's a long shot we're going to see Ewoks anywhere in the Book of Boba Fett. And I thought, before I actually heard this audio, because I did hear a buzz about this, Jason, you mentioned this to me after the after show this week. And I thought, well, he was thinking Jawas, but he meant Ewoks. I mean, there's been many times in my life when I've meant to say Jawas and I say Ewoks, or vice versa. Sometimes the brain and the mouth aren't really working in tandem with each other. But it's just because they're the little shorties in Star Wars. Right. And so it's easy to get them confused. But what does he mean? He worked with the Ewoks. That's just a wild little piece of audio.
I love the way he talks because he's like very yes, Ewok. Very fun to work with. He's just so he just has this, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just very declarative. Like when he says it, it's the last word.
Yes. Well, the world is Temuera Morrison's stage, it seems like. He seems like he's always on. He's always trying to entertain. He's always tongue-in-cheek. He's tongue-in-cheek a lot.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. So if you take him literally, like we're doing right now. No, I love his sense of humor. I really do, and I love his perspective. Hey, he's having a great ride. He knows he's never going to get another opportunity like this as an actor. I mean, it's unlikely he's going to get another opportunity like this, and this
could open
fun.
big doors for him.
It could. Mm-hmm. It could. I would love to. I'd love to, see these actors that, that 60 isn't the end, right? And you can still be a big hero and all of that.
Look at Hamill. The sequel trilogy certainly did a lot to revitalize his career.
Yeah, it sure did.
And he was, really only in parts of one of those films. I
don't think he knew that at the time.
Yeah. Oh no, not when he signed on board. But so Tem Morrison and Ming-Na Wen dropping hints about Ewoks. Will we see Ewoks in the Book of Boba Fett? I don't think so, but it's just fun to think about it. Now, at the end of the quiz, it was revealed that Ming-Na is Darth Maul. Okay. What Star Wars character are you? That's the results of these quizzes. But the funniest thing was when Tem looked to see his results, and it said that Tem was Fennec Shan. So, Ming-Na didn't like that.
No way that could have been orchestrated, I'm sure.
No.
Very scientific, really. Oh, yeah.
He showed the app on the screen, and it said, "You are Fennec Shan." And Ming-Na's jaw hit the floor. So always entertaining. And of course, great chemistry between these two actors on the Book of Boba Fett. You can't deny that. Even if you are a harsh critic of that show, you can't deny they have great chemistry on the show, and they have great chemistry when they're doing these interviews together too.
No, so sure do.
Maybe we'll have the pleasure of catching those two together on the convention circuit at some point in 2022.
I think they should just do like they did back in the 60s. You have a hit show on TV, you get the Vegas act going. Get the two of them.
Yeah.
They can, why not? Yeah, appearing live.
Kenny Baker wanted to do that with Anthony Daniels.
Yeah, that's what
Kenny
you did
wanted
back
to do
then.
a whole tour.
Yeah.
And Anthony didn't want anything to do with it.
He has no imagination. Kenny was a vaudevillian. He was a showman, baby. I think Anthony, Anthony is an actor, and Kenny was a showman.
Yeah. Kenny is. I think he had like vaudeville.
Oh, he definitely did vaudeville credits
going way back in the day. And
yeah,
he had a whole troupe that he would tour around with, and they would play music and do wacky bits together and stuff. I would have loved to seen that show, but we're watching Book of Boba Fett. That's the show we're talking about. As I said, we're obsessed with Boba Fett lately, and everyone else is. This media tour continues with an interview with NME, which I believe is a London-based entertainment website / network. And Tem and Ming-Na were speaking to NME, and Tem revealed he thinks Boba's talking too much.
It's about to get real here, folks. It's about to get real with this one.
I speak far too much. In fact, in the beginning, I was trying to get past my lines on to Ming-Na. And I thought, excuse me, director, I really feel that Ming-Na should say these lines because I want to stay mysterious. Right. I want to stay quiet.
But then I caught on. He wasn't just trying to be a very generous actor, which he is. He was just trying to parlay some of the work to me.
So, yeah. But, and even when, of course, well, obviously John's one of the key writers. So and so sometimes I'd always say, I think this is too much. I think this is too much. Then I'd go to, what was the other guy's name? Noah. I'd try and get.
Oh, Noah. Yes, Noah. Mm-hmm.
I remember, of course, John actually went away to Atlanta. So I rang Noah that night and I said, Noah, the scene tomorrow, I'm talking too much. This Boba doesn't talk this much. Look, I've got all these paragraphs here. I think we should get rid of it. And John's gone to Atlanta, so don't tell him. And then next minute that morning on set, I get a call from Atlanta. John wants you to say all that dialogue, and he'll cut it out later. So he was even keeping an eye on us way back, from all areas. But again, I had to start talking, I guess, otherwise we had to fill in the gaps and give out a little bit of information. And Ming's such a wonderful person to share my thoughts with too. So, but yes, I think I did speak a bit too much in answer to your question.
All right. Now, there are people out there on the internet that are trying to make this Temuera Morrison gate, that this is comparable to Mark Hamill calling Luke Skywalker Jake Skywalker. The narrative is Tim Morrison warned Disney that this show was not going to work. And, when you just read the quotes, you can read a lot into them. But when you hear Tim retelling it, it's a very... it's like any other story, when you're hanging out with your friends and you tell a story and you tell it in a humorous way. He's telling this all in a humorous way. I think there's a real point there. I think that he legit believes that that Boba might be better served as a character to be less talky. But I also think that there's a practicality to having a show called The Book of Boba Fett and the guy never talks. I don't see how practical that is.
Right.
You can't, this is the deal. You can't have it both ways. You can't have him mysterious and only popping up every once in a while. And when he does, it's really, how cool. And have him anchor his own TV show.
Yeah.
You can't do both.
That would make the writing really difficult for the show, for sure.
Extraordinarily.
And especially in those sequences when he's with the Sand People. You almost need him translating the conversations for us as viewers because no one else is going to be able to do it.
That's exactly right. I was thinking in those sequences, he was doing what Anthony Daniels and Mark Hamill did for R2-D2. Some of it was the writing was a little on the nose and maybe, but it was needed. It was needed because of, he was exactly what you said. He was a translator.
Yeah. So he freaked out and tried to reach Jon Favreau, but Favreau was in Atlanta. What's he doing there? Probably something with the Marvel films. Who knows?
Yeah.
He reached out to Noah Clore instead, and Noah is a staff writer for the Book of Boba Fett. So while Jon Favreau does get all the written by credits, there is another writer working on the show.
Yeah, Noah.
So, yeah, there's a collaboration going on here that I quite honestly never really paid attention to until I heard Tim bring up Noah while talking about him. He can't get through to Favreau. He can't get through to anyone. He's got Noah's phone number. It's like 2 a.m. Noah's in bed. Hello?
Noah, listen, I'm talking way too much. You got to do something about this. I can't get Favreau.
And then the phone rings again at Walt Disney Corporation. Bob Iger's office.
Put him on. Tell him it's Boba.
Because like what you said, Jason, that the rumors out there is that Tim is going above Jon Favreau's head and going to Disney saying, what are you doing with my character? This is crazy. It's not like Mark.
No.
It's not like Mark Hamill.
It's not, because Tem, bless his heart, he doesn't have the kind of relationship to Boba Fett like Mark has with Luke Skywalker. It's not even close. Yes. So I don't believe that's true. As I said, I do think that there's a kernel of truth in the notion that, yeah, as an actor, he thought that this character might be better served saying fewer lines. He also might have thought that he, as an actor, might be better served having to remember and memorize so many lines, and lines that were probably very foreign to him, you know, as somebody who's not steeped in Star Wars lore. So I think this is...
What's up, Bantha again?
Right. I think this is Much Ado About Nothing. It's an interesting clip, but I don't think that there's any real controversy here. I don't think we've uncovered. I think Tem Morrison is having the time of his life. He's enjoying being Boba Fett. He's enjoying hanging out with Ming and doing the press tour. And I just, you know, I always enjoy actors that you can tell are loving what they do and getting a lot of satisfaction out of it. Makes me enjoy his performance even more, honestly. Well, knowing he's having such a good time.
That's a little life hack for you, especially younger listeners, just starting off on your careers, or even if you're still in school. People will like what you do if you like it yourself a real lot.
Yeah.
That's something I've learned in life, that you will get support if you really like what you're doing. If you're really into what you do, others will pile on. And that's a nice thing to know.
Yeah.
And I think Tem Morrison kind of lives by that mantra to a degree. But you're right, Jason. He doesn't own the character of Boba Fett, and the character of Boba Fett doesn't own him like the character of Luke Skywalker owned Mark Hamill for so many years. I mean, Mark had probably a love-hate relationship with Luke Skywalker going back decades, because he was getting typecast. He couldn't find work. Everyone was seeing Luke Skywalker when he walked in the door. And for as much glory and fortune and fame that role gave Mark Hamill, it also prevented him from expanding upon his career for the longest time. He found comfort in becoming a voice actor, someone you don't even see on screen. And that's a result of Star Wars. And then he came to embrace the character as fandom became more organized and Star Wars continued on into the future. So, and there'd always been that prophecy hanging over his head his whole life, you know, that George was going to bring back the franchise and revitalize the characters, and he'd be playing Luke Skywalker again. You know, Carrie Fisher had to live with that. Harrison Ford, he moved on. But, you know, I mean, that's just the truth. And Harrison had that affordability to move along because his career didn't get so severely impacted by Star Wars as Carrie and Mark's did.
Well, you know, he did have a lot of help by guys like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. I think that Indiana Jones, you know, I think about Harrison. By the way, this is kind of just totally out of the blue, but a friend of mine at work, he and his wife, they just had a baby boy today, and they named him Harrison. Why? After Harrison Ford, because that's my buddy's favorite actor. I said, what's wrong with Indiana or Han? He's like, no, she never would have gone for it. But anyway, it's a great name. It's a great name. But I was thinking about Harrison Ford today because of that. And, you know, why was it that was it talent? What was it that sort of allowed him to step out? And yeah, Star Wars was a huge break, but man, I almost think Indiana Jones might have been a bigger break.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones proved to the world that he can play another character as effectively as Han Solo and become part of the pop culture fabric and be recognized for that character.
Yeah.
When he still had Han Solo in his back pocket.
Right.
So it was actually brilliant.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that opened the door to so many Harrison Ford
films.
Exactly. You know, that he was able to, and you know, I think it also has to do something with the man himself. You know, I think he's kind of a persuasive dude. I think he's very driven. You know, I don't know if Mark Hamill necessarily has those kind of qualities in the volume that Harrison Ford does.
Well, I think,
yeah,
he definitely has the it factor, right? You can't take your eyes off the guy.
Factor.
He has the it factor. You know, the other thing too, I would say about Harrison, and I can say this about, I think anyone that has stood the test of time and worked so consistently like Harrison Ford and so publicly and consistently, I think you have to be somebody that people like working with. And that's what I mean. So I think that in the case of Harrison Ford, he's a likable, affable guy that doesn't take it he takes it seriously enough, but maybe not too seriously.
He's like the guy that he's the one actor the crew will hang out with at the bar after they're done shooting for the day. You know, he's the guy,
right?
He's the blue collar actor who's more interested in the technical edge of things that happen with filmmaking. And remember those great stories from Ron Howard where he said Paul LeMat and Harrison Ford were sitting up in the second floor of the Holiday Inn drinking beers and throwing bottles at Ron Howard out in the parking lot saying, "Dance, Opie, dance." I mean, who doesn't want to hang out with that guy?
Yeah.
You know, that's a party I need to be at.
The other thing that I'd say about Harrison too, that I really enjoyed in watching him step back into Star Wars was some of those candid moments that you would see between him and some of the other Star Wars alum like Peter Mayhew and Mark and Billy D. And you could tell there was legitimate affection for them. He wasn't too big for his britches. He wasn't like, okay, everybody, the movie star is here. You know, he was back with his buddies, you know, from back then. And I just thought it was wonderful the way he treated everybody.
There's two stories I remember of Harrison Ford that come to mind in this situation. One is somebody said, "Who is your favorite co-star of all time?" And Harrison, without missing a beat, he just went, "Chewbacca." And, you know, Peter Mayhew was still alive when that statement was made, and Peter was thrilled by that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we talked to Peter about that. And then the other story I think of is Harrison was dining at a restaurant, and Anthony Daniels happened to be dining at another table. So he went over to say hi to Harrison, and Harrison said, "Hey, listen, could you get a round of waters here for the table? And we need some extra utensils for her and everything." And he thought Anthony was working at the restaurant.
Well, you know, in Harrison's defense, you know, he was in the costume, you know, in the fully masked. Most of the time they were working together.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Oh my! I don't think I'd ever heard that one. That's good.
That's a story, right?
That's
there.
funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can we get some more of those rolls? You got those rolls? I like those. Sesame seed. Sesame.
Yeah.
All right.
And she dropped her fork. Can she get another fork?
Yeah. Please, we need it. And everyone needs napkins. And he's like, "Oh, well, I will certainly tell somebody about this." You know,
there's something familiar about that guy.
I don't know. Have we? We must have had him as a waiter before. Right. Meanwhile, Anthony's just
man.
Like, geez.
Yeah. Anthony was trying to impress his date. I know Harrison Ford. All right. Robert Rodriguez. Now, that's somebody that I feel like has been kind of quiet. He's not out making the rounds the way Tem and Ming. He did have some interviews before the show premiered, but I'm not aware of him being out and about now since the show has debuted.
No, and Ming and Tem they did that media junket where they did over the course of a day, they talked to a handful of different outlets.
Yeah.
One after another, after they get like a 10-minute window.
Yes, right.
And they, punch them up on a Zoom call, and Tem and Ming answer the same questions and give the same answers to things for the most part.
But it is a little surprising that that we haven't seen Robert Rodriguez on those same calls.
I think Robert's still actually working on the show, and so his time is not like he doesn't have big wide open windows to do. He's still
working on the show.
Oh, sure. You know they're working on these episodes right up until their release. You know, they're not just sitting there in the can. They only shot them this time a year ago. They were shooting these things. So you have to imagine there's tweaks going on until the 11th hour with each episode. And that's not uncommon for television.
No, it's not.
All.
I do remember talking to guys like David Acord and Matthew Wood and even Dave Filoni about Clone Wars. And there were some, especially when it was on Cartoon Network, and there would be last minute changes that needed to be made and some edits, and they would switch things around, right before it would premiere. But I mean, it's a good reminder that that's going on. It's something I hadn't really thought about that he would be involved. I was thinking that, maybe they are trying to, as we were talking about at the beginning of the show, keep some of the creatives away from the fray of having to defend the work.
Yes, that's probably part of it too. I would have to think. Yeah.
But anyway, Robert Rodriguez did talk to TV Insider. So
TV Insider, this is before the season dropped, and we're just now getting some of these clips. But I thought they could add a little insight into some of the things we've seen thus far, and some of the things that people are talking about, fans are talking about. The thing I keep hearing is the tone of the show. The tone of the show. I've heard everything from the tone of the show nails the Star Wars aesthetic perfectly to the tone of the show is all over the place. And so, I don't know how to really address those sort of arguments, because it almost seems like that's a matter of perspective and taste. But Robert Rodriguez does talk about the tone of the Book of Boba Fett and how he wants to put like his own stamp on it. Does he really push that, or does he hold back on it? Robert Rodriguez talks about it.
I wasn't trying to bring my own style into it. I kind of wanted Boba to have his own language, and I wanted to feel like, oh, this is Robert stuff. I wanted it to feel like Boba stuff. So I came up with a way in that episode I did to film him in a different way than they had been filming Mando, to give him a different type of action and movement and attitude and point of view. He's less gunslinger and more almost barbarian, and that if he's outnumbered by a bunch of guys, there's a lot of psychological warfare. He'll be really brutal to send a message to the other ones that this is going to happen to you. And that's what sends them running, because he doesn't just like blast someone. He blasts them in the stomach and sends them flying after he's backhanded him. Just like humiliation tactics and psychological warfare, like he's a berserker. When he's really, actually has a kind heart to him too, which Tim brings.
Boy, I'm struggling a bit here. I'm not seeing on the screen what Robert is talking about. Now, I did see more of that in Boba's appearances on Mandalorian. That brutal barbarian warrior. I'm not seeing him. I'm not seeing it here. I mean, probably the most. He's had opportunities. He could have sent the mayor's major domo, his head, back to the mayor, or with him with a wound in his gut as a symbol, but he didn't. He could have sent Chrysanthemum back to the Hutts with his hands chopped off, but he didn't. I would say the most brutal thing we've seen him do was take out the biker gang with the Slave One. And by the way, since our after show, I haven't been able to stop thinking about your point that those guys probably didn't even do the deed against the Tuskens. So it makes it a double tragedy, I suppose. But Jim, I don't know. I'm not seeing what Robert's talking about here. Not seeing evidence of it.
He talks about how Tem was shot differently in The Mandalorian. I that's one thing I don't really see as much of either. Tem went crazy on those, Boba, I should say, went crazy on those stormtroopers in The Mandalorian. We've not seen anything like that, really. I mean, yes, the barroom brawl at Anchorhead with the Nicktoons is the closest we've gotten. But
what
must
he
not have
says
been
at
shot
the end,
as
though,
intensely though as the Boba
Right.
stormtrooper. It might be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the most notable thing is what Robert said at the end of that clip when he says, there's a sensibility we focus in on which Tem brings.
Yeah. Heart of gold.
And that's why, well, yeah. And I sort of think Boba Fett, as we see him in this incarnation, he has absorbed a lot of Temuera Morrison into him, into the character itself. And I like Temuera Morrison, and I've always liked Boba Fett, so it's working okay for me. But I can see how that's inconsistent with what people have in their headcanon about Boba Fett and the way he should be acting. So that part of the quote, I think Robert is 1,000% right on with. I do notice the difference in the tone between the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. I don't think it's a terrible shift or anything. With Boba Fett, though, it just feels like the cast is so much more limited. It's largely Boba and Fennec on screen having any sort of like real conversations, and then everything else just is kind of around it. The thing that really lifted the Mandalorian and put it into a different realm altogether is Baby Yoda. There's no Baby Yoda in the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett is firmly focused on Boba Fett. Even though Fennec Shand is there, she is so much in the background compared to the focus on Boba Fett. And that's such a different dynamic than what the Mandalorian had. While the show was really focused on the Mandalorian, the star of the show was Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
So it gets, it's a different dynamic to begin with. And then again, we've brought this up on the after shows. So much of Boba Fett has been transferred into the Mandalorian. So what are you going to do? Have 2 TV shows about the same exact character wearing almost identical armor? That's boring. It's too late to change the Mandalorian after 2 seasons are already out there. So what has to evolve? Well, it's the character of Boba Fett. And again, I'm not making any excuses for the direction that the producers chose or the choices they're making with the character. I'm not making any excuses for that, but I am able to rationalize it and understand why it's happening.
Yep. Yeah, I think we talked at one point about this idea that perhaps, some of the, we know that some of the ideas for the Boba Fett film ended up in The Mandalorian. And so you might say that, that they used a lot of their really good stuff on that show and they were left with, okay, what do we do with this character? And we talked about too, like, wow, how do you have 2 series running somewhat at the same time, focused on 2 different Mandalorians without, the average person being somewhat confused and that sort of thing. And Star Wars chronology is tricky anyway, I think, for someone just coming in, a more casual fan. And one way you do it is you make the characters dramatically different. And the other way you do it is you don't have him wearing the helmet very often.
Right. And in the case of the Book of Boba Fett, I've seen people criticizing the show, people who write for major publications saying Boba Fett should never take his helmet off. Well, then you just have another Mandalorian show. I mean, really, that's what's being established here is like all Star Wars shows going to be focusing on characters that have helmets with T-shaped visors. Right. That's just putting the whole franchise right into an instant rut. And so maybe they, instead of doing the Mandalorian, they should have just done Boba Fett. But that's not the way that the creative process works. And Boba Fett was born out of the Mandalorian. Right. Whether you like it or not. This is not a sequel necessarily to Return of the Jedi. It's a sequel to the Mandalorian. It's an extension of that, the Favreauverse.
It is. I do enjoy the elements that are of a sequel nature to Return of the Jedi. I'm
the flashback
that.
Sequences.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm digging that.
The flashback sequences.
Yeah, and revisiting. I mean, your point earlier about seeing things that you haven't seen or have wanted to see since you were a kid. I mean, I really relate to that big time. I love Jabba's palace. It's weird to see it so empty.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes to your point about the limitation with the cast and all of that. I do wonder if they relied too much on, hey, we've got Boba Fett. We don't need to have a big budget for lots of actors, man. No one's going to want to take their eyes off of the Boba,
Mr. Favreau, a man has been complaining you're not returning his calls. What's going on? Well, we got Boba Fett. We don't need a man. It's just we're so used to the environment. We're so used to the environment of Jabba's throne room being very heavily populated with all these exotic creatures and aliens and monsters and stuff. So when we see it all empty, it's kind of like, where'd everyone go?
Boy, something I wanted to mention on the after show and I forgot. That the sequences in the sanctuary, and in particular the one this week, where I felt like the camera rested on some of the aliens. I just want to give a round of applause. I just love seeing more of those classic Star Wars aliens in there. I think it's great. And even the ones that weren't classic Star Wars aliens, I feel like we're more inspired by, the Rick Baker stuff and from the 70s. And watching it with my family, I can't remember who it was, said something about a cheesy looking mask. And I go, yeah, it is kind of cheesy looking. Star Wars had cheesy looking masks.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want it too polished, because if you make it too polished, which is actually some of where I think the sequel trilogy went wrong, it was too good. It was too polished in some ways. Some of the visuals I want to see. I said the Muppety thing, on the after show. I want to see the Muppety stuff. I want to see the practical suits and all that. And like the Gamorrean guards are a good example. They need to be more Muppety, like they were in Return of the Jedi, instead of, a couple of shirtless dudes. So anyway, I think they could push that a little bit further.
Yeah, we're always going to base it on what we've seen before. A lot of people are criticizing the Book of Boba Fett based on their experience with The Mandalorian. Others are criticizing it based on our experience with the Star Wars cinematic universe that's covered the span of 45 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all have this fandom baggage we're carrying with us. And, I think we'll all be a lot happier if we can just find some way to leave that baggage at the door without, of course, putting our guard down.
Well,
we don't want them to just run ramshackle with the franchise and push it off into weird directions and stuff.
I think the baggage is okay if here's the thing. I think the big difference is that my baggage doesn't ruin it for me. I still enjoy it. I'm still having a good time. I still see them as Gamorrean guards, or I still see them as denizens of a Tatooine cantina. I can have my gripes and my nitpicks, but I don't hold on to it so tightly that I go, it takes me out of it. Can't do it. It's not my Star Wars.
Yeah. Won't watch again. Well, don't watch again. Everyone who says they won't watch again, they're in this for the long haul.
They're watching again.
Come back to us after all 7 episodes have dropped and we know the full story. But for now, we're just rolling along here with, we got 3 episodes left. If the information that I have is correct, we're going to see an episode directed by Dave Filoni, an episode directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, and an episode directed by Robert Rodriguez. Robert has 3 episodes in the can for this season. I don't know if that's the order in which they're going to drop, So I'm not saying that Bryce is
right.
directing the next episode. That just rattled them off in no particular order. But Robert Rodriguez has his fingerprints all over this series as executive producer. From what I understand, he's worked very closely with every director. As a matter of fact, being with them as they're shooting the episodes and everything. And Rodriguez, what?
Oh, I should say, speaking of being there on the set, in that Tim Morrison clip, he implies that Jon Favreau has been there while they were shooting. So
and Filoni's been there every day too, is according to what we've heard. So
yeah.
There's a lot of collaboration going on here, and of course Rodriguez worked on the Mando as well, and so he discusses here in this next clip with TV Insider. He's going to talk about the differences between Boba and the Mando, not only as series, but as characters.
Well, I mean, it definitely feels like it's cut from the same cloth, but he's a different character, and it's more of an underworld kind of story. And we definitely have a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot going on in this season, and it's a mind blower. So you just got to strap in, because I think Boba will be synonymous with having a really great time, because it's a lot of challenges he's up against, and he deals with it in a very unorthodox way.
Unorthodox, and that's even the characters surrounding Boba make note of that. They say a lot of the same things fans say,
right?
They don't respect you. You need to be more harsh. You need to rule
you've gone
with fear.
Soft.
You've gone soft. I mean, the characters are saying the same things that a lot of critics are saying.
Yeah.
So there's a method to this madness, and it's going to pay off. I really believe it. And of course, in that last clip, you hear Rodriguez speaking very confidently. It's a good time.
Yes.
You're gonna like, and Robert is maybe a little guilty of that. Pumping up the fan base. Star Wars fans, I think we're adverse to hype, even though it's the most hyped franchise in the world. If you want to hype up us hardcore fans about Star Wars, just show us the logo. And we're there. Yeah, man.
Right.
We're there. We got our wallets out. We're
logo and a date. That's all we need.
That's all we need. That's all we need. So, I predict we will be getting the date for the next live action series, which will be Kenobi. It'll be revealed at the end of episode 7, the season finale of Book of Boba Fett. And it's going to say Kenobi is going to drop on May the 4th.
May
2022.
4th. Oh, may the 4th be with us. Hey, one more story here. I just feel, I feel bad for poor Tom Holland, the actor, the Spider-Man actor Tom Holland, because his name has become synonymous with spilling the tea in interviews. And so this is a headline. It says, Star Wars star pulls a Tom Holland, leaks new series before the announcement. What this is apparently Ming-Na Wen. By the way, I just started following her on Instagram. She's got 2 Instagram handles. One is just her as the actress, and the other is like she's really into working out and healthy living and exercise, and
it shows.
It shows, yeah, no doubt. So it's great for motivation. She's very motivational, very positive. So I definitely suggest you give her a follow, and you can tell she really practices what she preaches. She's very, I think she's a great inspiration. But she did go to Twitter. I try to stay off Twitter for the most part personally, so I did not see this, but she tweeted, woohoo! Thrilled for you, Katie Sackhoff! ! Congrats, girl! ! Hashtag Bo-Katan, hashtag Star Wars, @Disney Plus. Now, she posted this and very quickly took it down, which, in fact, Jim, I can't even find a screen capture of the tweet. The story that I have here does not have an image of the tweet, but they do have this quoted. No one's denying it, but the speculation is that she thought perhaps an announcement had been made about something as she was congratulating Katie Sackhoff with Bo-Katan. So smart money is that it was maybe she heard from somebody in the business that, hey, Bo-Katan or Katie Sackhoff is getting a new series.
No, I saw the
Bo-Katan
tweet.
series.
I saw the tweet.
You saw the tweet?
Yeah. I did see it. And she was sharing a report from at that hashtag show. So that's
at that hashtag show,
pop culture podcast or something. I don't know what it is, but that hashtag show, I believe we may have reported on them before in the past. But the tweet says, more Star Wars updates. Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan is getting a Mandalorian spin-off series. And then there's a link to their article.
Well, what's interesting about the story that I have is that they leave out the part that the tweet accompanied sharing this article.
Well, I always see everything that happens in the realm of Star Wars. It goes across my desk first before anyone else even thinks about it. I'm all over it. And so I did see it. So I'm glad I'm able to clarify your questions.
So she may have just been responding to a rumor that was being reported.
That's all
by
she was.
Rumor site.
She retweeted a rumor from the hashtag show.
I see.
And, so once she retweeted it, the watchdogs at Lucasfilm and at Disney, they got a close eye on everyone associated with their projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second that you do anything out of line, they're calling you.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're not emailing you. They're not texting you. They're calling you.
Oh, we know
they're
this
calling me
firsthand. We know this firsthand.
In many situations, firsthand. As a matter of fact, most recently, last year. But they call you and they say you have to remove this or else,
Yeah.
And usually the or else is your career is in jeopardy. And Ming-Na Wen she certainly doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. So it means nothing for her to delete a tweet, to be able to walk a straight line as a company man like she is. She's no fool, and I don't blame her for that. But she tweeted that. Even some people in the know who actually saw the tweet, they say that confirms the report from that hashtag show.
No, I don't think so.
It doesn't confirm the report, and I'll tell you why. There's one piece of logic behind my reasoning, and that is that Ming-Na Wen has admitted, she's confessed that when she walked on the set of the Book of Boba Fett for that first day, she thought she was shooting The Mandalorian. She had no idea she was even there for a different series. So I don't think that guys like Filoni and Favreau are sitting Ming-Na Wen down and telling her about upcoming series that haven't been announced publicly.
Right. The only thing that I thought is, sometimes these rumors or these leaks happen because of industry people, agents at PR agencies, and reps will say, hey, my client just signed on for a new Star Wars series. And then that travels, and then they assume that maybe it's for public knowledge and somebody goes out there. That's what I thought when I saw this, because as I say, the story that I was looking at did not include the very, very important fact that it was accompanied by a rumor site and all of that. But point being is sometimes these folks in the business, it's not like they're hearing it from Favreau and Filoni, but they hear it from other people and through the grapevine.
Mm-hmm. But again, as I said, Ming-Na Wen didn't even know what the Book of Boba Fett was until she showed up that day on the set. And
neither did Tim Morrison.
Well, Tim you just point and then he'll go that way.
Right.
As long as there's a nice fat payday at the end of it, and he can do a bunch of, as long as he can get back to that Polynesian spa when it's over with.
That sounds pretty good right
bones. Now. Oh man,
doesn't it?
Could you imagine just being in New Zealand right now and we're freezing our butts off here in the Midwest, and all I want is just
it's summertime.
That's what I need. New Zealand, try something new. I'm like, yeah, I'll try something new. Are you kidding me? Sitting in a hot tub with Tim Morrison, New Zealand? That would just be like, that would be a dream come true. That really would. Most Star Wars fans, they want to get to Skywalker Ranch, like fanboys, But for me, I think sitting in a hot tub with Tim Morrison would really.
It's right up there.
I remember, I don't remember what convention it was, but I walked into, I just went into the, they have the little workout room at the hotel. And I was up in the morning. I went in there and I just got on the treadmill and I was just kind of moving along a little bit. Yeah, I just went in there I do this at every hotel I go to. I go and I give their workout room a spin. And Tim Morrison came in. And he got up on the treadmill, and all of these faces pressed up against the glass window outside the workout room. They were all pressed up there to watch Jango Fett on a treadmill. I thought that was.
What's funny about that is that when Tim tells a story, he goes, "I walk in, and podcaster Jimmy Mack comes in and gets on the treadmill, and all these faces
other people in there
pressed up against the window to look at the podcaster." Mr. Podcaster Jimmy Mack.
Well, we've talked how out of touch Tim can be. But no, there were some other dudes in there too. It wasn't just me and Tim. And I was like, cool, Jango Fett, right on.
Right.
And I was like, oh, look at all the people. They got the faces pressed up. And then I went outside and I remember I went to the Starbucks or something and I was walking back past that workout area to get to the elevator to go back up to the rooms. And, people were all going, oh, he's in there. There he is. He's in there. And they were all still just huddled around to watch him work out.
There he is.
I know Anthony Daniels, what he does when he travels for conventions, he always uses the workout rooms too, but he goes in there at like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning when no one's around.
No kidding.
And because he never adjusts his personal clock to wherever he is. He stays on London time.
Really?
And and he maintains that when he travels.
No kidding.
So he'll be up like at 2 in the morning, ready to start the day.
Yeah,
and
because it's 7 a.m. London time or whatever it is.
It's 7 a.m. London time. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Let's get to this because I'm kind of curious. This next section we're going to call it "The Death of Boba Fett." George Lucas, "The Death of Boba Fett," and. Jim, I can sort of guess what this is about, but why don't you tell us what you've brought us here?
Well, I was thinking about the history of Boba Fett's death and how many times he was resurrected prior to the Book of Boba Fett. This is not anything new for Star Wars fans. We've dealt with bringing Boba back via the expanded universe, most notably in the comic books. But there were novels where Boba Fett was an older man training Jaina Solo in the ways of the Mandalorian. Crazy stories like that. But what I'm more interested in is Boba getting out of that Sarlacc pit. And what's really inspired this is just all of the talk around the Book of Boba Fett and how people reacted to him fighting his way out of the Sarlacc pit. And I believe that the depiction that we see on screen is something that I've always kind of pictured in my head. And it's consistent with some old comic books too, as well. But the first thing I want to focus in on is his actual death. And of course, we're all very familiar with the Return of the Jedi. We know what that looked like. We know what that sounded like. Boba Fett, where's right. Boba Fett? But I decided just to get a different perspective. I decided to pull out the old NPR radio drama and I grabbed a clip. This is the moment of Boba Fett's death as heard on the Return of the Jedi radio drama.
What? Boba Fett, where? Back on his feet? Which way, Chewie? I think I got it. Chewie, sound off. Did I get him? Yeah, where's Boba Fett? His jetpack went haywire and now he's down the Sarlacc's throat? But how could it?
Sarlacc sizing me up for dessert.
Save it, Chewie.
What? What, Lassie? Timmy's in a well? You say his jetpack went all haywire?
I love it. I love it.
But I love that they use the same sound effects.
The same scream, exact same sound, and even the same burp from the Sarlacc.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we have been spared of the belching Sarlacc in the Book of Boba Fett.
Didn't have. Now, if he would have swallowed the Slave One, I think there would have been quite a big belch.
Yeah, right. Or at least a fart felt all the way into Mos Eisley.
Yeah, if George was directing that, there'd have been more gases escaping from that Sarlacc pit. That's for sure.
A fart and then an earthquake on Tatooine. I guess that would be a Tatooine quake.
Right.
But, they're in Mos Espa. Whoa! And then they're like, what's that smell? Okay, enough of the
Let's get serious.
Childish humor. We have to get serious because we're going to be visited by the maker right now. This is George Lucas himself, the mastermind behind Star Wars, and talking on the Return of the Jedi DVD/Blu-ray, the audio commentary track. This I lifted directly from that moment when Boba Fett dies, and let's get into George Lucas's head about Boba Fett.
Boba Fett was just another one of the minions, another one of the bounty hunters and bad guys. But he became such a favorite of everybody's that for having such a small part, he had a very large presence. Because most people don't believe he died anyway. I had contemplating putting that extra shot in where he climbs out of the hole, but I figure it doesn't quite fit in the end. That his history has been told in the first trilogy, it makes it even more of a misstep that we wouldn't make more out of the event of his defeat. Because most people don't believe he died anyway.
He keeps saying
he says it twice.
Yeah.
Said it twice.
There's one observation I have about that is it me or does that sound like that was recorded about 7:30 in the morning and George was still in bed and he just had the mic laying on top of his chest? I don't believe that. Nobody thinks he's dead anyway. But I mean, he has that like morning voice going on, that George morning voice.
He's like, this is the commentary morning? Oh, no. He's like, well, let me get ready for it. And so they knock on his door and they're like, George, are you ready to record now? I'm ready. Come in. And he's still in bed, but he just he changed into a plaid shirt. Right. So he's ready to go. Mic me up.
Mic me up.
Mic me up. Let's go. Let's do this.
But the other thing is, he kind of admits that at the time he considered not killing the character off, and then he regretted it even further once the character had his backstory told in the prequel trilogy. So I think I was one of those that kind of scoffed at some of the Boba Fett fans and said, he was a throwaway character. He wasn't that important. I mean, George didn't think he was. I still think that he's a little overblown. Okay. Truth be told. Yeah. He's a little overblown.
So wrong.
But hearing this quote, here's George saying that, that wasn't his intention. And then he regretted it further after the sequel or the prequel trilogy. So
I will tell you this. I was there, boots on the ground, 1980, 12 years old. And I understand the impact Boba Fett had on Star Wars fans of that era. It was huge. As a matter of fact, I bought an iron-on T-shirt. I went to the store and I picked the pattern and the shirt, and then they took the press and they actually ironed on the shirt there as I waited. And it was like this plasticky thing on my chest. It sparkled a little bit. But it was a picture of the Fett Man, and it said right there, Boba Fett. And I was proudly walking around my neighborhood the week the film opened and wearing that shirt. And all the kids said to me, they thought he was the coolest thing in the movie, and they didn't know his name. They're like, Boba Fett, bounty hunter. is what they would point at and go, bounty hunter, because that's all Boba Fett was known as.
He's all yours,
in the film.
bounty hunter.
And as kids, we often didn't sit around watching the credits or anything.
Right,
we weren't so like scholarly or educated about film. Now I did because I took Star Wars very seriously. And nowadays people do it because they expect an after credit scene. But
thanks, Marvel.
But I mean, even if the name scrolls by Boba Fett, it doesn't say Boba Fett the bounty hunter. So you might not even make that connection if you did sit through the credits. Right. Because they never say Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back.
They do not. In fact, Darth Vader calls him bounty hunter.
Bounty hunter. Yeah.
He says he's all everyone was bounty hunter.
That's what everyone was calling him back in the day. And so I had that iron-on shirt. And not only was the image of Boba Fett pressed into that shirt, it was pressed into my brain and my psyche. I was an instant Boba Fett fan. Even before that, because of the mail-away action figure, of course. That was huge. So all of this stuff was working in Boba Fett's favor back then. And he was just so cool. And we expected so much more from him in Return of the Jedi and didn't get it. So you guys complaining about this Disney Plus show, I'd laugh at you compared to the pain I felt back in 1983.
That's how it all ended.
Boba Fett.
Right. He accidentally kills Boba.
So, but George is right. He's like, I was contemplating putting in a shot of him coming up out of the hole.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he means in Return of the Jedi or in the special edition 20 years later. He doesn't specifically say.
Yeah.
But I think he was talking about the original Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I do.
And then he just feels like, well, he blew it, and he wasn't going to go and put it into the Return of the Jedi special edition.
He would have clarified because he loves that special edition. When I was doing the special edition, I thought, this is an opportunity to maybe, bring him back. But everyone thought he lived anyway, so he didn't die.
Yeah, right. I think he looked at Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, as his way of bringing Boba back.
Yes.
That was his way to appease the fan base.
Right.
Because it had become clear to him by the mid-90s that people loved Boba Fett. He's just like, I pissed away Boba. Why'd I do that? I knew he was cool. Stupid Marquand. He blames Richard Marquand, who probably had no say in the matter whatsoever. Right.
It's all Marquand's fault. Had I not, I wanted to bring him back, but Marquand told me that that was a waste of time and nobody cared.
Yeah, right. And that guy's not around to defend himself.
Right.
Not like he would anyway. But George is right. We never, as a fan base, could deal with the death of Boba Fett. He was just too cool to go out like a punk like that. And leave it to Marvel Comics to really kind of pile on in that aspect as the Star Wars comics continued beyond Return of the Jedi. And the comic book line ran for a couple years, and it just really ran out of gas because George was done with Star Wars. Lucasfilm was making Star Wars very low priority, and there was no inspiration there. It was almost like Star Wars needed a few years to be put on ice so it could be revived and brought back for new generations. And
he could have just rolled right into the next trilogy.
Yeah, but he wanted to do it on his terms. Right, he wanted to do it on his terms and his way. And there's a lot of sacrifice that happened for him to do that with the original trilogy.
Huge. But I guess my point is that it wasn't a foregone conclusion that the light would burn out for Star Wars. I think he could have kept it going. Had there been more, the comic and the toys would have continued to sell if there would have been more tie-in product, with the more movies and stuff.
It could have
it could have helped the franchise keep its head above water for a while, and it did for a couple of years. And Kenner really wanted to expand the story with new action figures and stuff, but the pitches just went nowhere with Lucasfilm. And that's the core of all things Star Wars. It was just, there was no inspiration or motivation from Lucasfilm itself to keep Star Wars alive and vibrant. They just let it go.
Yeah.
So that's why everything just kind of fizzled out by about 1985.
Yeah.
And right after Return of the Jedi, the comics continued. This is Marvel Comics 81. The original Star Wars line, this came out March 84. So this would have been after the release of Return of the Jedi. This is a couple issues following the release of Return of the Jedi. And it features the resurrection of Boba Fett, his escape from the Sarlacc pit. And it's not unlike what we see in the book of Boba Fett. As a matter of fact, if you even look at the panels now, which you can find online by doing just a simple Google search. But if you do that, you'll notice definite similarities, almost to the point where you might be thinking you're looking at a comic adaptation of the book of Boba Fett. Now, what it features is, I need to set up the story a little bit, Jason, for our RFR All Access members. Jason has put up a page of these panels, these comic book panels from Marvel. From Marvel 81. And the setup to the story is this. Han Solo is on Endor celebrating the destruction of the Death Star, and he gets reunited with the Millennium Falcon. He boards it for the first time since it's returned from the battle of the Death Star 2, and it's in good shape, and he just feels so relieved that they won the war. And Chewie is there, and they're on board the Falcon, and Han's just like, dude, we need money. And Chewie agrees, and Han said, let's blow out of here, go to Tatooine. I got some bucks stashed away at a bank there, and we could go get the money, and then we'll come back here, you know. And so they just want to get away. Wookiee and friend.
Yeah,
just to have a, you know,
they would have a guy's
right.
Guy's ride. Go.
So they split. But I think Leia's with them on this trip. As a matter of fact, I know Leia does tag along. Yes.
Oh, he's got to bring the old lady.
Yes,
you know, Chewie's pissed about that. You know, he's like, God, oh yeah, now she's always got to be around. You know how that
and
goes.
And R2 is also with them. And so they park in Mos Eisley at a docking bay, and they go to the bank where Han has his nest egg tucked away, and they say, but you're frozen in carbonite. You cannot take out any money. You cannot withdraw.
Come on. You're not serious.
He goes, I'm standing right here. And they said, we know that, but our computers locked your account because we heard you were frozen in carbonite. He's like, oh, this is a bunch of crap. So he storms back to the Falcon with Leia, and they left R2 there. And Leia, Chewie, and Han, they return to the Falcon, and R2's gone. Where'd R2 go? The Jawas stole R2. Okay.
Oh.
So they have a speeder. They track down. They have two speeders, as a matter of fact. They track down the sandcrawler that's carrying R2. And they start shooting blaster bolts at it to slow down the sandcrawler. And at the very same moment, a tribe of Tuskens attacks the sandcrawler. So you have Leia in a speeder, you got Han in a speeder, and you got Tuskens on Banthas, and everyone's shooting at the sandcrawler. Meanwhile, inside the sandcrawler is R2 and Boba Fett. The Jawas picked up Boba Fett up out of the sand. They found him there just like they did on the Book of Boba Fett. They find him there outside the Sarlacc, and they put him on board the sandcrawler like they did with Cobb Vanth. But they don't strip him of his armor. He has his armor. So Han boards the sandcrawler. He jumps out of his speeder. Chewie's driving. He jumps out of the speeder, boards the sandcrawler, and gets inside of it to get R2 back.
At the same time, the Jawas, who are freaked out because the Tuskens are attacking along with these two speeders they don't even know, they bail from the Sandcrawler. So the Sandcrawler is just running out of control across the Dune Sea, and you have Han in there with Boba Fett and R2. Boba Fett has amnesia. He doesn't know who Han is, and Han realizes that, and he wants to save Boba. He wants to pull him off of that Sandcrawler before it crashes or something happens, because it's heading right toward the Sarlacc pit. Ironically, the Sandcrawler, out of control Sandcrawler, with Boba Fett, R2, and Han on board, heading straight toward the Sarlacc pit. The irony of it all, and right. So
one word for it.
Han gets R2 off of the Sandcrawler and into one of their speeders safely. And he's reaching down for Boba to pull him up out of the Sandcrawler. And all of a sudden, Boba's memory comes back. He goes, Han Solo. And he starts brawling with Han. He wants to shoot him. And Han's like, oh, this is the worst timing for something like this. So Han bails. Han bails from the Sandcrawler to safety right as it plunges the entire Sandcrawler.
Look at him doing a Peter Pan right off of the Sandcrawler up there.
And
Blast!
The entire Sandcrawler plunges with Boba Fett aboard, ironically, as I said, plunges right into the Sarlacc pit, and the Sarlacc pit consumes the thing whole. Wow. It's like when you see like a snake eat a rabbit. Kind of, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
you know,
you can't look away.
It's like, how is that possible? How is that even possible? But there, it's happened. I can see the rabbit inside the snake, and I could see the Sandcrawler plunging into the Sarlacc.
You could easily see how this influenced Book of Boba. Everything rather than the Sandcrawler, you had the Slave One. You know, ship to tooth.
Yes, I was thinking of that.
Wow.
And just before we started the show, I went upstairs to get a bottle of water, and they were watching something on TV. I couldn't tell what it was. And I was like, what is that? You know? And then all of a sudden I hear, let's get a little closer. And I hear Wendy go, oh my God.
They're watching Book of Boba. Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, that's what
Dad doesn't wait for them, and they don't wait for Dad. I see. I see how it is now. Got to get
every
that.
man for himself in my house when it comes to Star Wars. So, and I did get a nice text from Dylan at 1:55 in the morning on Tuesday late night. And he's, "Are you still up?" I'm like, "Oh, my Boba buddy wants to hang late night for me," but I didn't see the message until the morning. I was.
Oh no.
I've only made it for one live drop, you know, the 2 a.m. here in the Central Time Zone is when Boba Fett drops. 2 a.m. Oh, I'm so jealous of you LA guys. I could do midnight every week.
That would be easy.
Problem.
We'd be, you know what?
Yeah.
If we were on the West Coast, we would do the after show.
Yeah.
Midnight. Yeah. I say that because there's no way that's happening.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for, swanky. So that's the first time we ever got the emergence of Boba Fett out of the Sarlacc pit, and it looks a lot like it did on the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
you have Boba climbing along the side of it. He's covered in sand, and you see him crawl up out of it, and then he actually does use his jetpack. See, do you see the sequence though? They show him, he's crawled out. Oh, I guess that's what he's flashing back to. Oh, see, he's already out in the sand and he's remembering what happened.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah. So
because the buzzards are flying over him.
Yeah, they are. And the Sarlacc is still alive and eating the buzzards.
Right. Oh, right.
See that when he's there's a flashback here even.
Yes, right.
We're flashback crazy when it comes to Boba, but he has a flashback as he's lying on the sands of Tatooine, left for dead, and they show the Sarlacc, and this is how I always pictured it in my head canon. The burp and the whoosh as he shoots out of the Sarlacc pit with his jetpack. That's how I figured. I didn't think he'd use his flamethrower to blast out the side.
Yeah,
and
right.
Crawl up out of the sand.
Right.
That must have been very disorienting because you don't know which direction you're even heading in.
Well, he could have been going
digging.
Yeah, right. I was just going to say, it's like in water. If you're a diver, you don't know which way is up and which way is down.
Well, at least you can look at where the bubbles are heading. Then you know there's no bubbles in the sand.
Oh, that's true.
And so, Boba, he could have like emerged at Mos Espa.
Wasn't there
you guys
a
left me for dead in the sands? I've been digging for 2 years.
I was thinking, was that game Dig Dug, where you're digging?
I love Dig Dug.
Yeah, Dig Dug.
Yeah.
That's basically what he was doing. He was doing a little Dig Dug, real life.
Boba Fett Dig Dug. Now there's a video game mod I would love to see. Video game Dig Dug. And
get out of the Sarlacc pit.
Instead of those weird puffy things, they're Jawas there and they're coming after you.
Right.
But they do pick up Boba, much like what could have been very inspirational for The Mandalorian with Cobb Vanth, where they pick him up in the desert.
Right.
But they don't barter for anything from him. Cobb Vanth got the armor because the Jawas already had it. Now we know how the Jawas got it. Wow.
Now we know.
So, and then of course, Dark Horse, Dark Empire, 1992. That was a big comic book that really brought Star Wars back to the comic book, the spinner rack, if you will, in the comic shops. And Boba Fett appeared in this story that happened 6 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Dark Empire 4. He shows up. He's accompanied by Dengar. He confronts Han Solo and Leia, and they're like, Boba Fett, we thought you were dead. And the classic line from Boba, the Sarlacc found me somewhat indigestible, Solo. Yeah. I mean, that's really all we needed. We didn't get any other explanation about it. There's a book called Tales of the Bounty Hunters that features Dengar rescuing Boba Fett. Boba did escape the Sarlacc, and it was Dengar who found him and nursed him back to health, as opposed to Jawas or Tuskens finding him. So many have taken credit for Boba Fett's recovery over the years in Star Wars fiction. And then one guy is taking credit for actually predicting the return of Boba Fett, and that's Patton Oswalt, super nerd comedian Patton Oswalt. He did the famous filibuster on Parks and Rec several years ago. It was an outtake from the show. They released his entire take of this nerd filibuster where he lays out his idea for the next Star Wars sequel. And it's going to be this big Star Wars Marvel mashup and stuff. But he says after the crawler, the first thing you see is Tatooine. And so I'll let Patton take over here. And again, this is from Parks and Rec, a show that's been off the air for several years. Patton Oswalt predicting the resurrection of Boba Fett.
Pan down from the twin suns of Tatooine. We are now close on the mouth of the Sarlacc pit. After a beat, the gloved Mandalorian armor gauntlet of Boba Fett grabs onto the sand outside the Sarlacc pit, and the feared bounty hunter pulls himself from the maw of the sand beast.
Okay, this is exactly...
And we realize that he survived his fall during the battle at Jabba's palace ship.
Ooh, Jabba's palace ship. Come on. You know, the Battle of the Pit of Carcoon, you could say, or you could say, what do they call it in Book of Boba Fett? They call it the Great.
The sail barge disaster.
Sail barge disaster. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But there's Patton. That's back from 2013.
Wow.
And he's just riffing. That was all ad-libbed. He's just riffing. So, the palace ship, whatever. It's a filibuster. You're just supposed to...
You're filibustering.
Basically, you're vomiting words to take up all the time to prevent some bills from passing and things like that. So that's what Patton Oswalt. So, but he got more credit than I think he really deserved, though, quite honestly, because as I presented to you guys, there were many instances in the past via Star Wars publishing, comic books, novels, where we had Boba Fett return, and I think a lot of fans played around with those mental images of it actually happening. We know George Lucas did. He said he was considering including a scene in Return of the Jedi that showed Boba climbing up out of the hole, as he says it. You know, George like downplays it. He's like, yeah, just be climbing up out of the hole. Just climbing. You know, it's like this guy, you armed him to the teeth with flamethrowers and knee darts and jet backpack with a missile on the back of it. He's like, I was just crawling out of the thing. It's just like so nonplussed.
Always.
Always. So that's, but yeah, Patton Oswalt though, I mean, that is a nerdy deep dive.
It sure is.
That he's doing there on NBC network television. And I always say it loud, say it proud. So bless you, Mr. Oswald, for spreading the word of Star Wars and predicting Boba Fett's return all those years ago.
Chewie, get us out of here!